Remember just a few years ago, hydrogen was everywhere. It was going to be the ultimate clean fuel, the superhero that would decarbonize our factories, power our ships, you name it. But lately, the conversation has gotten a little quieter, a little more complicated. So what's the real story? Let's dig in.
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Was all that excitement just a bubble that burst? Or are we just seeing the messy, totally normal growing pains of building a massive new energy system from scratch? We're going to look at the latest data and find out.
Okay, so to really get what's happening now, we have to rewind to the early 2020s. You got to remember the vibe back then. The excitement was just absolutely off the charts.
I mean, you had governments throwing out these huge national strategies. Companies were announcing hundreds of billions of dollars in projects. It felt like every single week there was some new, game-changing announcement. The ambition was just sky high.
But, okay, let's fast forward to today. The reality on the ground, well, it looks a little different. The data is showing a pretty big gap between all those grand announcements and what's actually getting built.
So, check this out. If you add up all the low-emissions hydrogen projects that have been announced, they could, in theory, produce 37 million tons per year by 2030. That is a huge number. But, and this is a really big but, the amount of production that's coming from projects that have actually gotten the green light, where the money is secured and they're officially a go, is just 4.2 million tons. So what is going on here? Why this massive gap between the dream and the reality?
Well, it boils down to a few major roadblocks. First, it's still way more expensive to make clean hydrogen, whether it's green from renewables or blue from natural gas with carbon capture, than the old-school gray hydrogen from fossil fuels. Then there's the problem of, who's actually going to buy it? We don't have enough pipelines and storage yet, and to top it all off, the regulations can be a total maze to get through.
Now, you absolutely cannot talk about hydrogen today without talking about China. The country has become the powerhouse for a really critical piece of the puzzle, the electrolyser. That's the machine you need to make green hydrogen. It basically just zaps water with electricity and splits it into hydrogen and oxygen.
And just look at this. China now has nearly 60% of the entire world's capacity to build these things. This might sound familiar, right? It's kind of the same playbook we've seen with solar panels and batteries, and it is pushing costs down like you wouldn't believe.
But here's where it gets really interesting. While those Chinese electrolyzers are super cheap to buy and install inside China, a lot of that cost advantage disappears when they get exported. You've got shipping costs, tariffs, and the need to adapt them for different rules and standards in other countries. All that stuff adds up and closes the price gap.
And all this brings us to what might be the single biggest puzzle in the whole hydrogen economy, creating demand. It is the classic chicken and egg problem. Why would anyone build a gigantic, expensive hydrogen plant if nobody's lined up to actually buy the stuff? Let's take a look at a key example, making steel. Using low-emissions hydrogen to make steel, so-called green steel, would be an absolute game-changer for the climate. The problem? Right now, it costs about 40% more than making steel the old-fashioned, carbon-intensive way.
And that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? A steel company works on razor-thin margins. They can't just eat a 40% cost increase. But what if that cost doesn't stop there? What if it gets passed all the way down the line to us, the final customer?
And here is the paradox. While that 40% is a huge deal for the steel producer, its effect on the final price of, say, a new electric car is tiny. We're talking only about a 1% increase. This suggests that if we can just create markets where people are willing to pay that tiny bit extra for a green product, we could unlock a massive wave of demand.
So governments are trying to step in and solve this puzzle. In the US, the strategy is all about big tax credits to make producing clean hydrogen cheaper from the get-go. The EU is taking a different approach. They're trying to create demand directly, with mandates that require industries like shipping and aviation to use a certain amount of clean fuels. Two different playbooks, same goal.
Okay, so after that big reality check, is the hydrogen dream fading? Is it over? Not even close. Despite all the setbacks, there are very real, very tangible signs that the foundation is still being built, piece by piece.
Get this. The global installed capacity of electrolyzers, those key machines we keep talking about, has grown 9 times since just 2021. That's a 9-fold increase. This isn't hype on a PowerPoint slide. This is real hardware getting installed and switched on. That's the kind of explosive growth we saw in the early days of solar.
I think this quote from the International Energy Agency's latest report just perfectly nails where we are right now.
Yes, the industry has hit some bumps. And yes, the early expectations were probably way too high. But the underlying momentum is still there, and it's positive.
So here's the bottom line. We're moving past the breathless, hydrogen will solve everything phase. We're now in the much tougher, much more important phase of actually figuring out the costs, building the infrastructure, and creating real markets. No, hydrogen isn't a silver bullet. But for cleaning up some of our toughest, dirtiest industries, it might just be one of the most vital tools we have. The real question is how quickly we can learn to use it.